Alright, welcome back to the stream where today I'm going to be working on finishing the Art Nouveau-inspired pattern design that we began last week in the sketches. I'm Kelly, welcome back to my studio, and in here in the lives you can ask any questions that you have about what I'm working on. If you have any other art related questions you can ask those too, just pop those down in the chat and I'll get to them as soon as I can. So up here on the screen I have pulled up, let me just change the opacity on this. So I have the original sketch that I worked on in last week's stream. I did some minor modifications just because I brought it into Photoshop. Last week Photoshop wasn't working, so I was using a program that's new to me. It's called Krita. It's a free program that you can use, and it worked pretty well, but I just wanted to bring it into Photoshop because it's what I'm used to and I feel a little more comfortable drawing in that. So we have the inspiration, some of the inspiration. I'm kind of basing this off of a design that I saw on the back of a chair. I've been getting a lot of inspiration lately from a website called SS Maritime, and mainly what they show on that website is photos of different ocean liners. So I've been looking through there, looking at what the furnishings and the wallpapers and fabrics looked like to find different kinds of inspiration. And for this one, the piece that I was looking at kind of had this feel of sort of like a grapevine-esque moment to it. So I decided to get some reference images of grapevines and some grapes, and I just kind of played around with some sketches of what this could look like. So what I'm going to do today is, I've already started this. Let me drop the opacity back down and lock this just so I have it underneath. So today, just to speed things along a little bit, I've drawn two different versions of this vine, and I'm going to draw a third one, and then I'm going to clean those up. So let me just size these up. These are just variations on here. And I also just tried a pattern just with those just to see what it was doing, because I think what's going to take the longest here today is not creating the elements, because essentially, well, I have three leaves and 3 clusters of grapes, so that's not going to take very long. Coming up with a pattern that looks nice is going to take a while. So this is the elements that I kind of brought together without the grapevine, without the leaves, without the grapes. And let me just show you what that turned into. Let me just pull that up, and I'm going to scale this down a bit. So it has like a very stripe kind of a look to it that's not really what I'm going for. So I'm going to work on different ways to adjust these vines so that they're intertwining, but they have like a good kind of a good flow and a good feel. So let me just remove that, and I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to try drawing some variations on a third version. Let me drop my tablet down a second. So let me see, I'm going to get rid of a few things there, and I'm just using a brush at the moment, just sizing it up, and then yeah, I have some angle to this. So I just modified one of the stock brushes that comes with Adobe Illustrator, and I just modified it a little bit because it's round, and I think it's also, you know, pretty square. So I just tilted it, and I brought the angle in a little bit. So that gives me, I'm going to leave the strokes. Oh, it definitely modified things. All right. Well, anyway, what that gives me is a bit of an angle to the brush, so that when I draw with it, it has different thicks and thins. So I'm just gonna kind of come in here and try a couple different variations on what I already have sketched underneath here, and kind of see what's working for me. This is the easiest way, using a brush like this is the easiest way to get these kind of flowing lines that I'm looking for here. And when I'm finished coming up with the ideas, I'll show you how I'm going to connect all these together so they don't look like, see, if we scroll in right here, you can see how they're very obviously different pieces. I don't want that. So I'll show you how I'm going to change that. I think a little bit like this. So I think that gives me 3 good options that I can play with. I'm just going to shrink these down. And then I'm going to work on, oops, let me group this before I forget. So I'm going to work on drawing the grape leaves and the grape clusters. And those are going to be separate from these vines. I'm going to add them in. And that way I can add more vines if I need to as I'm working. So let me just go into these leaves here. And I think for this, I'm probably going to let's use the pen tool for this. Because I want this kind of jagged look to the grape leaves. I need to scroll in a bit more. I think I'm going to change the corners to be a little bit rounded. So hopefully that will make things a little easier to work with here. As I'm going, I'm not totally following the thing that I had in the first place. There's some bits that I want to change, and I'm kind of going at those as I'm working. Also, I don't want to be too close to what I'm doing because it's going to end up being a more boring design if I do that. So I think what I want here is I want this leaf to kind of cross over with that leaf. So I think to do that, I'm going to round this out a bit more. Oops. And then come across it. So it just creates this little loop here. All right. Just reverse that. And now I'm just going to go in and fix any places where things aren't exactly the way that I want. So right there, I just took the shape builder tool and just went across, and that just cuts out that piece of leaf that I had overlapped there. So now that it has that overlapping without me having to go in and do any extra work there, I'm just going to change a few of these points that got a little bit weird. I don't like usually going in this close, but you know, sometimes when you're working with small designs like this, you have to go in really close. I generally like to stay zoomed out just because I like having a bigger picture of what's happening. Okay, I like that. I'm going to turn this so I can work on it in a different angle that's easier for me to draw. I'm going to go back to the brush. I'm going to change the color to something else. Let's just use this gray. And I'm going to work on putting in the central lines. I think I'm going to adjust the brush slightly. Make it a bit thinner. And then I'm just going to cut out those, oops. First I'm going to expand them. So that gives me one of the leaves. I'm just going to go back through and do the rest of these as well. And I'm just going to put them off to the side because right now I'm just worried about getting the pieces done, and then I'll worry about combining everything in a bit. And then I'll have things at the proper scale and it'll, you know, start to come together a bit better. I want these leaves to all be a little bit different too, because then that kind of helps the more natural feel that I'm going for with this pattern. I'm going to carve this one in quite a bit further than I've been doing. Just again to have a little bit of variation. Okay, so essentially at this point, like all I'm doing is just making sure that it looks like a decent leaf shape. I'm not trying to get it to look exactly like a grape leaf. If I was going to do that, of course I would, you know, work a little bit more on getting the right kind of reference and, you know, really taking that and running with it. But that's not my goal here. I'm kind of going for more of like a kind of an abstract take on the grape leaves. And I'm kind of adjusting things as I go along, removing or adding pins as I need them. These pen tip points, anchor points, couldn't think of the right word there. And then just kind of rounding things out to be leaf shape. It's a little bit more difficult when I was drawing it upside down. So it helps to be able to go back and kind of adjust things. Remember, if you have any questions, you can always drop those down in the chat. Let's see, what do I want to do with this? I think I want less space there. I like using the pen tool. I know a lot of people don't like using it, but I think it's a lot easier than some of the other options to get the look that I'm going for. I'm going to change that. I have been going for like a deeper groove there. I'm going to change that just based on the overall look that I'm getting here. Oops. Now I'm going to go back to the brush and put in the central lines. And I think I'll do one more of these. Actually, you know, I'm going to move on to the grapes for a minute just so I have some of those in place. So I'm going to use an ellipse and I'm going to make it a perfect circle to start, and then I'm going to adjust it so it's more of like a grape sort of a shape. And I'm going to do a couple variations of this. So some a little bit smaller, some a little bit different shaped. Okay. And I'm just adding an offset path behind them, and that's going to help me to get the look of the grapes that I'm going for. So they're all separate. And I'm just going to kind of put them together in sort of a grape cluster sort of a way. And then I'll just where they all fall in a little bit. So usually the smallest ones are at the base. So I'm going to go with that. Let's see. I think I'll bring this one up and this one up. I'm just going to add another one that's a little bit smaller in here. One thing I'm not crazy about is it's changing the offset path size just based on how I was doing that. So I'll probably go back through and just modify that, but that's for a later time. Okay. And then I'll just take this and duplicate it and bring it down and then just rearrange where the elements are. And one more time. Alright, so I've got the grapes done. Oops, apparently I deleted one of them. So I gotta do that again. I'll just do this top one over. I'll group these. And I'll do one more of the leaves, and then we can start putting everything together. Let's see, I'll do this leaf down here. So I'm back to the pen tool, and I'm just using this to get the sort of jagged look of these leaves, and then we'll work on putting all this together in a pattern. The pattern has been the bit that I've been struggling with this one, because I tried some test pieces, and if you click on the thumbnail you'll see one of them, and that one wasn't bad, but it wasn't really what I was going for. So sometimes a lot of these patterns will take multiple iterations before I'll get something that looks like my idea. I like that one. I'm just going to change to a different brush and adjust this one so I'm not messing up the brushes I already have. Let me just put this up here. Okay. How do you decide that an iteration works with your ideas? How close do you try to stay to the inspiration? I usually, if I'm working on patterns, I use the inspiration during the sketch phase and then I put it aside. So I only use it to figure out the direction I'm going, and as far as the inspiration itself, I mean, I don't even know that I could find the well, you know what? I can find the inspiration for this one. Hold on. Let me see what I even was going with. I think it was this one. Must have been this one. So you can see on the, let me make it big. So you can see on this chair here how there's like this kind of, let me get a pen and some color. So if you see here in the center, there's, of this chair, there's kind of this diamond sort of shape like this. That's kind of like a vine, and it goes off in each direction, and it's very uniform and very regular. So down here are the clusters of grapes. Put those in. They're right here and right here. And then the leaves are back here like this, and then it has other swirling parts, and then it has flowers in it. And you know, depending on what your aim is, you can stick to this if your inspiration is, I mean, if your goal is to do something that's very historically accurate, you can certainly stick to this sort of look. I mean, if I take that away and then just pull this out here, you can see how different that is based on what I'm doing. So this is a very reflective pattern, and this pattern over here on the side, oops, is not that at all. It might end up being something more similar to that. But it has elements of this pattern that I don't have and didn't really want to include in this. So I like to look to the inspiration for just ideas, and for, you know, I looked to this one specifically for the idea of grape leaves and the clusters of grapes. But I didn't look for the actual pattern. And as I'm looking for it, like looking at it, there's some things that, you know, if I had more time on this pattern, I would probably do a little differently. So say you can see like with these grape leaves, you might be able to see there's a lot more detail on that than what I'm doing. I'm going for more of a more realistic style of grape leaf as opposed to this is very highly stylized. And same thing with the grapes. And that's just not what I wanted to do here. So it really depends on your goals. My goal is typically not to, you know, create something that looks exactly like the inspiration, just something that kind of flows off of that. So now I'm going to take one of these vines elements and I'm going to size it up to roughly the size that it was. I'm going to go in and just clean it up. So at this point, these are all individual brush strokes, so I can just adjust where they fall, and then I'm going to link them all together and just clean it up in the end, and I'll show you how I do that. I'm just changing the angle of some of these so they fit better against each other. And there'll still be parts where they overlap, and that's fine. I'll change that in a second. I actually kind of like how that one curves back on itself. So now I'm just going to make these into an expanded shape and then a single shape. And then I'll just come in with the smooth tool and clean up any of these little bits that are a little weird. I could also do this just with the direct selection tool, which is the white arrow, but I'm just using the smooth tool here. Okay, there's that one. So now at this point, I just want to see where I might want to put in the leaves and the grapes. So I'm not really using this sketch anymore. So I'm just going to slide this off to the side for a minute. And then just kind of play around with location for these things. And I'll probably resize some bits and add some bits to the spiraling leaves. And right here, I'm just adding an offset path to this so that I can still see it after it crosses over with the vine, because I want them to be separate elements. And I think I'm going to add to these ends here. So if we go back to the sketch that I did, in here I have these little leaf elements that I added to some of the ends of the vines, and I think I'm going to add a few of those in here. Let me just put that over here for reference. I'm just going to stick these wherever they make sense, because they're not going to make sense everywhere. They're also going to take a little bit of adjusting and finessing, just based on the size of what I'm working on here. might come through in a little bit and adjust how some of these go over each other. Just like add in bits where it makes like it look like the vine twisted on itself. That might be something that I add in. And I think I'm going to add two more, at least one more down here. And when I first draw it, obviously it's not looking that great, but the goal is just to get something in place, and then I can always adjust it. Maybe I'll just leave it with two on this one for now. And I'll bring these back to the top. And actually, I'm going to go into these grape clusters here, and I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to do that with each of them, just as I'm using them. One thing I'm trying to avoid is too much evenness, and that's a little bit of an issue with this one. I think I'm just going to ignore that one, and I'll put in another leaf instead. Alright, so that's going to be that one. I'm just going to move these leaves off here and grapes so I have access to those. And I can adjust these certainly when I take them into the pattern. Just right now I wanted to get a feel for it. And actually I might take them straight into a pattern after I finish reshaping these two. Just so I can work on it a little bit larger. I'm sizing these up to be the same here just so that I can get the similar sort of size with what I'm working on. just go back in and fix these a little, and then I'm going to move to the pattern next. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take these three elements and all these leaves and grapes over here, and I'm going to start working on putting them into a pattern. So let's see. First I want to start with a box for this one because I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this, and as opposed to trying to freehand a repeat, I like to give myself some kind of guideline. So I'm just going to put a box in here, and then I'll adjust the size to be something I can remember. So let's do 575 by 630. And then I'll put the color that I've been using for the background. Oops, I'll put that in there. And then I think I have one more grape to recolor. Okay. So now I can start placing these elements in here and just kind of see what happens. I'm going to lock the square. And I think I want them to sort of twist into each other a bit. So they'll be rotated and duplicated in different kinds of ways. And right now I'm just kind of giving, a little bit, kind of doing this a little bit freehand. See what works and what doesn't work. Now, at this point, because this one, I'm going to have it overlap all the corners. So I'm just going to move that one around to figure out 575 and 630 to figure out what the corners are going to look like. And then I'll move these both down. I'm going to move these bits off to the side for now because I don't need those just yet. Because as you can see, like grapes are going off at an angle. I don't want that. So I'll be messing with that and figuring out where those go in a little bit. And now I'm going to work on what goes, filling in the rest of this axis. And then just kind of going from there, filling in across the top too. So what happens if we go like this way? And this is all trial and error. There is no, right way or wrong way to do this. It's just about what is the look that you're going for. And until I have a good idea, I'm not going to lock in, one piece goes here or whatever. I'm not going to lock things in just yet. My idea with this is kind of like a twisted mass of vines, as opposed to something that like has an obvious repeat to it. Alright, so I'm going to try duplicating this top stretch down on the bottom. And I think I'll like this one enough to move it. When you're creating a technical repeat, you just want the, hold on, can't think and copy at the same time. You want the left and the right to be identical, and you want the top and the bottom to be identical. And anything you change in the middle is fine. You can move it wherever you want. You just want those to line up. I can see there's a couple places where there's like a blank spot in the middle that I don't want. So if you're going to move something on one axis, you have to move it on both at the same time. And it's going to end up moving things off the axis, but that's okay. So I'll just delete that one. Don't want these to be in the same spot. So it's about looking for where things are repeating where you don't want them to repeat too. So I'm going to move both of these, so I have to move them at the same time. And same thing here. I'm also trying to keep in mind that I'm going to be adding in things like the grapes and the leaves, so I want to make sure I still have space for those. But since this vining element is the biggest element, I want to get that in there first. So I'm going to repeat this one over on the other side. I think that's what it is. If I've messed it up because I have the box size wrong, it's going to be very obvious when I go to make it a pattern. So I can easily fix that. One more row. I think if I was going to do this exact thing again, I would not have made it this big. That is for sure. Oh, I haven't duplicated that one. Oh, that's okay. One more row. So I'm just going to try this as is, just to see what it looks like. I don't, at the moment, I'm not certain that it would actually repeat, but we can try it. Yeah, it does. Okay. So now I'm just going to work on placing the leaves and the grapes and just adjusting where those go. Yes, Nori, can I help you? What's the matter, sweetheart? Yeah? What's the matter? Okay, so I'm going to adjust the ones that I already have on here, and I'm going to do them individually because each of these groups is going to be different, and I don't necessarily want this to be a repeating pattern as far as the, like, I don't necessarily want this to be a directional pattern. So I want to have a little bit of flexibility with that, and that's mainly going to exist in the leaves, and I'm also going to change the size of some of these leaves because they're going to help me fill in pieces. And then I still need to go in and, yeah, I'm probably going to add these other end of the vine leaf elements, and I'm just going to add them to a few, and then I'm going to duplicate them and move them around. So I'll add them to this one, and then I'll just move this one around. Wherever there's one of these elements, I'll just add it. Okay, so I'm just going to essentially replace the ones that are this style. I'm just going to replace them. So I'm going to get a bank of them over here. This would have been easier to do earlier, I just forgot to do it. So, let's see. I'm just going to line them up and then replace it. So how do you decide how much white space to have versus elements? It kind of just depends on the pattern that you're making and the look that you're going for. Right now I kind of wanted it, like, think about the vibe of the pattern you're making. So right now I was going for something that's kind of like a bunch of twisted grapevines. So I want it to be really twisted and kind of intertwined. I think I only actually have 2 of those. So I'll just put these aside in case I need them. So yeah, it's a bit of personal preference and just the look that you're going for. All right, so now that I know I only have 2 of those, I'm actually going to remove some of these and replace them because I don't really want there to only be 2 of those. then let's see, for this one I'm not going to add any extra little bits because apparently I have a lot of those and I don't feel like doing that right now. So I'm just going to go through and just adjust where I have some of the grapevines and the leaves on a few of these. Mainly the size is what I'm adjusting, and the angle, and keeping in mind that if I go back through and put anything that's going to be over the edge, I need to do that twice. I'm also just filling in where I didn't have the offset path before. I'm just correcting that because I want to make sure to have that and to have all the bits where all the center bits of the leaves to be filled in so that there aren't weird lines in the middle of them. Where the grapes are going upside down, I'm actually going to leave them going upside down, so you can use this in a different, you can use this pattern in different directions. And I'm also going to delete everything that crosses the bottom axis and the right hand side because I'm going to be duplicating those again, and I don't need those at the moment. So I'm only going to be putting yeah, I'll just delete that. I'm only going to be putting the grapes and the leaves on the bits that I have right here because the rest of it's going to be duplicated anyway. And making sure everything is on the top layer, all the grape leaves and the grape clusters themselves. I'm also trying to make sure that I don't have any weird tangent lines, so anything that lines up where I don't want it to line up. It's just trying to keep a cleaner look on what I'm doing. And since I have some things in groups, I'm just ungrouping them so I can have access to them. And as far as what goes upside down and what doesn't go upside down, I'm just kind of going off of what looks right in the area, and I'm also stretching and pulling some pieces so they're a little different shape. I'm liking how it's looking so far. It's a little bit not quite as busy as I would like, but it's getting there. I think I'm gonna size up a few of these elements. And for some of them, I have them grouped, so I have to go into the group to size them up. I have to move things on top of other things just to get that overlap that I'm going for. That's a little bit better. That's more what I'm going for. This different size of elements. Because if it was like an actual, bunch of grapes that are hanging in a tree, then they're going to be all different sizes. Okay. So I'm almost set with this. All I have to do now is just get the rest of the sizing down. And then I'm going to duplicate the two axes. Alright, so looking at this side, I think there's a couple more things I'm going to adjust, and then I'm going to move things over to be on the other side too, just so I can see that it's lining up and it's not doing something weird. So I've got some small leaves, some big leaves. Get a few more of these small ones in here. And I think I'm going to take some down even further. Alright, so this one here, I can see the vine through it. So it looks like I didn't do an offset path on this one, so I'll just do that now. Whoops. Was I doing offset path? What was I doing? Yeah, offset path. Those are just little things that I want to check while I'm going through here because I don't want to miss any of those. Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate this side. So this is the left hand side. I'm just gonna copy and paste everything that's crossing over the edge to the other side. I believe it was 575. Hopefully I'm right. Looks right. And then I'm going to do the same thing across the top. So everything that's crossing the top gets moved down. Alright, now that I have those in line, I can just fill in right along these edges where it's a little bit sparse. I'm just going to fill that in. Change the shape of those. I don't like that. And anything, if I put something in here, like if I put this leaf where it's going to fall across the edge, then I'd have to duplicate it over to the other side. So it's just something to keep in mind while I'm working here. Also, these are probably not going to be on top of the new stuff that I just cut and paste, so I just have to put those on top again. I think I'll get a few more of these tiny leaves and scatter them around. Apparently is turning into a much busier pattern than I was originally anticipating, but you know, that happens a lot. I usually have an idea in my mind and then, you know, what I end up making doesn't necessarily line up with what I first thought, but that's fine. I need something big right in here. Yeah, right in there. And I'll move this over. Oops. Do another upside down grape cluster right here. This is what kind of gives the pattern directionality. So this would make it more for something like fabric than maybe wallpaper. It would still probably work in like a wallpaper application, but I think at this point it's more of a fabric sort of a thing. Let's see. I'm just looking for empty spots or bits where I don't like if something's overlapping. Like I didn't really like that, how that was overlapping right there. Kind of jumping in and out of groups. And I think I'm just going to scatter a few more of these tiny leaves around because I only have a few of those. And then we'll try it out as a pattern. So this one I'm putting on the edge right now, so I'm going to duplicate it. Oops. Let's try that again. There it goes. All right, I'm going to delete some, whoops. I'm going to delete these bits that are around here that are extra. Let's take another look back from here. It's looking a little bit bare on this side, so a few more of those maybe medium-sized leaves. Whoops. All right, I think that's looking pretty good. At this point, I'm just going to keep, I could mess with this all day and that's not really going to be helpful. All right, so I'm going to delete these extra pieces over here. And I'm just going to try it at this point just to see how it works. I can't for the life of me remember how many boxes I have back here. I think I locked them anyway. So I'm going to go back here. I don't think oh, apparently I did. All right, so I'm going to remove that. I'm just going to try this as a pattern and just see what happens. Chances are I still have to adjust things on the edges, but just give it a shot. A lot of times you can tell in the swatch panel if it's going to work, if it looks like it's an all-over pattern as opposed to something with a lot of white on the edges. Yep, that worked. So that's usually a hint. So I can tell right now, I've zoomed it way out, and there's very obviously a repeat going on here. So I'm going to try to figure out where that's happening. Let me scale that back again. And I think I'll do like 50%. So I can see there's definitely like a white line to it there. Oh, bother. Okay. I'm just essentially trying to remove that. So the white line is going to be along this top and bottom axis. So I'm just going to add some more leaf elements and grape elements there to try to clean that up. And again, anything I add across the, I think I'll add them across the top and then I'll just duplicate down to the bottom. Hopefully this will be enough to kind of zhuzh it up a little bit without having to do a lot of adjusting. Let's see, get another leaf right in there. Okay, so I'm going to delete everything across the bottom axis. And then, okay, so I can see right now I don't have this across the top axis. So I'm going to change that, because it should be up there because it crosses over. Actually, let me put everything back and make sure that I have all these things. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yep. Nope. Yes. Okay, so that was the only one. Okay, so now that I moved that, I can see that I have to move a few things down in here just to make sure they line up properly. Okay, so now I can come back in and copy everything that's across the top axis again. And just make sure I have that all selected, and I'm going to move this down to the bottom. Okay, so let's try that again. Yeah, I like that better. So what I have here now is less of an obvious square to it. There's still spots where there's an obvious square to it, but it's going to happen. I mean, this fabric or whatever it would be wouldn't be really printed at that kind of a size. And again, I could mess with this all day long, but I'm not going to do that because I see a few places where I have things in a straight line. Okay, I might have to mess with it a little. So, for example, these big leaves here, we're all in a straight line. So it's kind of just about removing bits like that are just a little too uniform. Yeah, so this is going to be my final repeat, and then I can adjust the color, and that will be all set. Let me just put this in here. Okay, so now I'm going to delete a lot of these colors here. I don't need them, and I'll delete up to there. And then I'll just pull in a couple of color palettes that I have to work with. And I'm just going to try this out. This is, it's a simple pattern to color because it's only 2 colors. But I'll just see what are some different options I could have here. I like that yellow. I can see there's a few little bits where I still need to make some adjustments in the pattern where the leaves are crossing that I don't want them to, but that's okay. For now, it works. And I think color is by far the most subjective part, and definitely the part that I'm not hugely confident in. I prefer just working everything in gray tones, to be honest, but doesn't really work that way. So I just try to find something that I like. I kind of like that. I'm going to leave that for now and then try different options. So I already have the pattern saved as that. And I think I want something either a bit brighter or a bit darker. Oof, that was blinding. Gonna save that one. And I don't think I've used this color group. I kind of like the navy blue. So that gives me a couple variations on this pattern. Oops. And it's all done. There we go. So now I just saved this. I have a pattern library where I'm working on all different kinds of patterns. I thought I had it open, but I don't. So I would just save this in here. Let me open that quick, because I don't actually save these files unless I need them for something. And this right now is just kind of like, it's just something I'm working on. Where is it? It's opening in a different type of Illustrator. That's not really what I wanted. I'll open it differently. I'll open this one instead. So these are just some different patterns that I've made. So I would take one of these and copy and paste it in here, and that puts the pattern in here, and then I can just put it in the box and then scale it. And then if I need to access the repeat, I can just pull it right out and it's right there. So then I can go in here and I can shift and adjust things. Right now it's just grouped, so I would just ungroup it and then shift things as I needed to. So that's usually what I do, as opposed to saving a bunch of different saving a bunch of different files when I'm just working on practicing things. That's what I do instead. So I just have like a master file that I can go into. So that's it for this week. I'm not quite sure what I feel like doing next week. I think maybe it won't be pattern design. I think I need a break from that. I think maybe we'll do like some life drawing or some painting, something along those lines. So I hope you'll join me then. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so that you're notified when I go live next week. And it'll be the same time as this week, so 3 p.m. Eastern on here. So I will see you then. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye.